Okay, so a few weeks ago I had an Anon ask me for a GIF tutorial, so I am going to do that now, and it's just a really plain basic tutorial. So I'm going to go over screen capping in KMPlayer for the screen caps for the GIF, and then making the GIF and sharpening it, and then I'll talk about coloring a little bit too. So first, you're going to make a new folder. That's going to be where you save the screen caps. So I have just a blank one right here. And then you open up the video in KMPlayer. And I've actually done this a few times, but I've kind of had some issues. So I'll be screen capping, but I'm going to be using different caps to make the GIF. Okay, so then once you're at the place that you want to GIF from the video, either your menu's over here, or you can right click on the top bar and go to Capture, Frame Extract, and it'll give you this little pop-up window, and then you want to select that folder that you made. And sorry, I have a lot of folders and it's really messy. Okay, so select that folder, and then you can put a prefix if you want, if you're going to have multiple scenes in the same folder. Otherwise, you can leave that blank. Format, I'd suggest PNG. It's the slowest, but it takes the cleanest caps. Continuously, if you're working with 720 or 1080, do original size. If I do a 480 video, I have to do specified size, and it has to be at like 720 and 400 for some reason to make it look good. I have a really old version of KMPlayer because the newer ones wouldn't work for me, so that might be why it might not be an issue for you. But if you're having a problem with it coming out really squished, I would say select specified size for those 480 videos. So original size, and then every single frame. You can also do like every 2 frames, but it makes it a little bit choppier. So then once you have those settings, hit start and let it play until you have what you want of the clip, and then stop, and then you can minimize this. Okay, so then once you have it all capped, you can open up Photoshop, and we're going to load those screen caps in as frames. So we go to File, and then down to Scripts, and I believe most people do load files into a stack. When I select that, I get this error message, and because all of my programs are jank, so I have a lot of weird workarounds, so you might not need to do some of this stuff with your programs. But if you can't do that, do load multiple DICOM files. And I think the load files into stack is similar to this, so you should be able to follow it. And then you select the folder that you made, and like I said, I did it earlier, so I'm going to use a better set of screen caps. Okay, so then once it loads, you have all the layers over here, and you need to turn those into frames. So there's this little menu right here. Select that and make frames from layers, and then it puts them all right here. So then after you have all your frames, you're gonna crop it to the correct size, and I'm doing 500, and we'll do 500 by 260, and you can, change it and make it tighter or wider or whatever. So we'll just leave this like this. And then so this is part of my weird program thing. I cannot change the delay on here, or at least I think it's my program. I haven't heard of other people having this problem. I can't change my frame delay at this point, because if I do, what happens is, so like if I select these, for any kind of delay, and then do make that was the make timeline animation, which is what the next step we're going to be doing. If I do that, I get this issue where a lot of these frames are not like pulled all the way out, so it'll cut off short. Like there, it'll just go blank because this needs to be pulled all the way down. So if you do this and you experience this, you'll have to do it the exact same way I do. So I'm going to back up and not do that delay now. So I've just cropped it. After cropping it, select the timeline animation, and it turns into that. Now I can select all of my layers over here and convert them to a smart filter, which will mean they're one object, so that I can sharpen it instead of each individual frame by either doing it by hand or using a script, which is what I used to do. So after that, I go to Sharpen, Smart Sharpen. Settings are 500 and then 0.4 for radius, and make sure more accurate, and it's Gaussian blur. Okay, so now it's sharpened, and I'm going to save it before, since I have to do the frame delay separately, I save it at this point and then open it back up, which kind of seems dumb, but it's kind of how I have to do it. So at this point I don't care about the size because I'm going to be editing it, so I want it to be max colors and save it as high quality as possible before I'm doing stuff. So you can see I've had a few attempts of this already. Okay, so now I will open it back up. And now, and I don't know why it does this to me too sometimes, where it like had that weird chunk of nothing at the end. Now I can change my delay. 0.06 to 0.08 is probably what you're going to want to use. I usually do 0.07, 0.6 if it's a really action-intense thing that looks weird if it's slowed down. So I have this, and so it plays, it's working and everything, but I need to color it. Okay, so now to color it, I am going to, you can either do a pre-made PSD, or you can color it specifically for this. So if I'm going to do a pre-made one, I would go to Open, and then find the PSD that either I downloaded or one that I already have. And I'm going to use one that I made and use a lot. So I open it and then I drag them so that they're separate, because I am going to drag this file onto here. So on my current file, or on my current GIF, I'm going to go up to the top layer and highlight it, and then go to this old PSD, grab the group of the coloring, and just drop it on here, and it'll automatically color it. So I could stop now, or I could do different coloring or adjust it or something for this scene. So I am going to completely start over so that you can see kind of the basic coloring, what you do to start. You're going to need to tinker with it yourself and see what works for the scene that you're working with, or the show, or whatever. But a good place to start is curves, and I make a group just so that they're all neat and together and organized. And so I open up curves, and then this end kind of makes it brighter, and this end adds some contrast. And I can go in and do the individual main RGB colors, but I am not going to do that. You can monkey around with that yourself. And then after curves, you can do layers, and that's similar type of basic, making it a little brighter or more contrast. And then I would do vibrance. I usually add some to make sure that it doesn't get too desaturated. And actually I'm going to move on to a cap that is not blue because it's really hard to color when I'm looking at that weird filter. So then I have vibrance and levels and curves. Now I'm going to add some brightness. And one thing that I usually use, I really like to use gradient maps because it kind of ties it together, especially if you're doing an entire set. And for this one I really like the combination of the purple and the orange. So I have this kind of different toned down version, and I'm going to use that. Once all of my frames are highlighted, I do go up here and I'm going to change this to soft light so that it's not insanely colored. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So now I've colored it, I've changed the frame rate, everything's pretty much done. I just have to make sure that it's going to work on the Tumblr limit of 2 megs. And I know it's not because it's 500 by 260, and that's pretty huge. So it can probably only take about 30 frames. So I'm automatically just going to drop it down to 29. And then go here to Save for Web and Devices. And it's still a little bit over 2 megs. I can also change the colors. But if I drop it down to 128, you can see it gets kind of pixely. So I'm going to go back to 250 and I am just going to cut down like 2 more frames. And we're still over, so I'm going to lose another frame. And this is just trial and error. You're going to need to do this to see how many you need to get rid of, because I don't like getting rid of any more than I need to, but it's hard to guess sometimes. So now this should be fine. I can run it. And I like what that's doing, so then change the looping options to forever. And I am done. And then I can just save it, and you can see how many times this has not worked for me. So, okay, so last thing would be, I will go over text a little bit. So I have the coloring. I could save this, or I could add a little bit of text, and I will add oh, if I can write it right. Okay, so I'm going to add that, and I have my little font thing here, so I can change the font. I am going to leave it on Nevis, because I like it for this. If I'm doing text, like dialogue text, I usually use LA, but I'm not doing that now, so I'll leave it on Nevis, and then change the size. I think I like it on 18. I don't like Nevis when it gets really big. Like that just, I don't know, it looks gross. So I'm going to leave it on 18, that's about as big as I like it, and then you can change here the spacing. But I think 100 is good. So I'll leave it there. Now I can do some, like a drop shadow or stroke or something if I want. If I don't like it looking flat like this, which I don't particularly, so I will add a drop shadow. And to do that, I just double click on the font and check drop shadow, and then on here I can change the settings. I don't really mess with these much, and I don't think I change them from the default very much, so about those settings. And then sometimes add stroke. Don't really like it on this one, so I'm going to leave that one off. So I'll just do drop shadow, and then now I'm going to align it because I want it to be totally centered. So to do that, I select this layer and then the visible layer. And then because it's going to need the text layer needs a reference for what to align it with. So then I go to Layer, Align, Vertical Centers, and it vertically centers it. And then Layer, Align, and Horizontal. And then I click, make sure I'm only clicked on this, because what happens is, and I don't know if this happens to everyone, you might not have this issue, this might just be another one of my weird like workaround things, because when I add the drop shadow and align it, it works on the layer or on the frame I was on, but it does not save it to any of the other frames. So what I'm going to do is highlight all of these frames when I'm on when the first frame that I was on is the one that has the correct drop shadow and alignment. Then I do make it not visible, duplicate it, delete this older one, and then make it visible again. And now you can see that it carries over. So from the first one to each one, I can see the drop shadow and it's in the same placement. So now I can stop it, and I would save it like I just did for the other thing. Although now it has more. For some reason, that's weird. Usually if you add text, it drops it down. So I guess I'll cut another frame. And now I can save it. And all caps. So now I have all of my finished GIFs. So I hope that was helpful. It was nothing special. It was a really basic tutorial. I usually don't do too many special things, but if you have any questions or if there's anything I left out or you want clarification on, please feel free to ask.